That's why drugs like over-the-counter drugs like Prilosec will block acid production because of this cell in the stomach lining that actually is triggered by histamine and helps stimulate stomach acid. It can also come from your food. And this is where things get really tricky. There's a lot of different foods that are high in histamine. I'm going to give you a short list later on in the episode, so hang around. I'm going to give you some solutions, so hang around. But think of aged and fermented and improperly stored foods, and also leftovers. Who out there doesn't like leftovers? My whole life, every single person I've lived with, roommate, husband, partners, boyfriends, everyone. Why don't you eat your leftovers, Tina? I don't like leftovers. I don't feel good after I eat leftovers. I didn't know why until years ago when I learned about histamine. Histamine builds up in leftovers. This is why eating out at restaurants can be tricky. This is why eating food that's been stored for any period of time can be tricky. This is why I always want to cook my food fresh at home and prepare my meats and my vegetables at home fresh, because I don't like leftovers. Leftovers tend to accumulate histamine in them. And so you eat them and you don't feel good and you don't know why, and you blame the food and you blame the ingredients in the food, but it might just be that you have high histamine in that leftover dish, right? So this gets real tricky. And your gut bacteria, certain gut bacteria. There are certain strains of gut bacteria that make histamine. There's also the interjection of lipopolysaccharides, which is a whole other conversation. It gets real complicated real fast, but there are certain bugs that make lipopolysaccharides, and the presence of lipopolysaccharides can increase histamine too. So it all gets very messy and convoluted, and I will give you a hint for the end of this episode. Treat the gut first. That's what we're getting at here. What does it do in the body? It is an immune defense. It triggers inflammation to fight off invaders. It regulates stomach acid, like I mentioned, which helps you digest your food. It is involved in brain signaling. It works on neurotransmitters, influences alertness, appetite, and mood. I have seen high histamine individuals have psychosis induced because of histamine, particularly teenagers. The way that my histamine response presented in my teenage years is very different than it has presented in my perimenopausal going into menopause years. And it's always impacted my mood. When I was younger, it drove panic attacks and anxiety. Now I'm much more familiar with that anxiety, and so it doesn't lead me into panic. Every so often, you may have experienced this, or you know someone who has experienced a panic attack. I would blame histamine, especially if it's just like nondescript, random panic attack out of nowhere. You've heard people say this, like, I am a totally calm, normal person, and then I freaked out and ended up in the ER thinking I was having a heart attack, and it just turned out to be a panic attack. I think there might be a histamine component there. And histamine can be related to POTS, which is like a postural orthostatic hypotension tachycardia syndrome, where your heart rate goes really fast, but your blood pressure dumps out. It's been implicated and related to hypermobility syndrome, ADHD. Like, histamine might be a player and has been connected as a player into several different triads of conditions.